LA Schools, and of course, Board Member Garcia's office. And the title is College Best Fit Session 2020. So excited to learn, to ask questions, and to share the excitement of this time for many of our kids. It's college application season, and while it's really exciting, it also comes with a lot of anxiety, a lot of questions, particularly for first-generation students and first-generation families. And so a lot of information will be shared today that will help not only families, guardians, mentors, but also staff that work with many of our kids that are in the process to apply for college. So you'll be getting a lot of information and have the opportunity to ask a lot of clarifying questions. So a couple of things before we jump in. At the bottom, you see a little globe. Please pick your language. If you're an English speaker, select English, and Spanish, there will be Spanish translation. There's also a chat box where you can put questions, and we will be doing a number of polls. So when you see the little poll thing come up, please respond in a timely basis so we can move on and include your information. And if you have questions, enter them into either the chat or the Q&A box at the bottom. So if you have any questions on logistics, feel free to reach out and we'll get back to you. And with that, I will pass it over to our best champion for kids for over a decade, and a friend and colleague, and just an amazing person that brings a lot of optimism and positivity, even when things are not looking that great. So thank you, Monica, for helping me get through the last 2 weeks. You're just so positive and so amazing, and it's great to do this with you. So
hello, comadre Ana, and hello, everyone. Welcome to Changing Conversations. You know, Ana and I have been doing Changing Conversations, as you know, for some 6 years. And it's all about bringing together this community of believers, a community that wants to convene leaders, support leaders, and align wherever possible. You know, I'm not sure if it's the last 2 weeks or 2 months, or whenever the world is asking all of us to lift and rise and continue forward in such challenged environments. But today we're going to focus. We're going to focus on supporting young people through their academic journey and helping them see where they get out, which college is that best fit. But I'm also asking all of us to make sure we understand we are growing the vision of what our job is. It's not just about classroom today, or it's not about preparation for next class next year, but it is about moving beyond just A through G college and career readiness, but really lifting that lens to what is it gonna take to help us move our success, boosting success to college graduation. And that is about continuing to change the world. So Ana, I'm excited about what we're all gonna learn tonight. And I'm gonna say that over the last decade, there's been so many people stepping in to change the second largest school district in the country. So many partners, growing courage, and really moving cooperation and collaboration for student success to the center. I'm excited to be in partnership with the Partnership for LA Schools. Back in 2009, parents and teachers, folks got to vote, yes, I want in. And ever since then, the partnership not only serves students and schools directly, lifting leadership that is modeling courage and love in action, but also, you know, really working on the inside-outside strategy, policy, recommendations, some mechanics for that system, and bringing in a conversation about the believers. So I am pleased to be in partnership with the Partnership of LA Schools, and I'm excited to welcome Adam Fletcher, the General Counsel for the partnership, but really a champion for children, his own and our communities. Because Adam works, he's so tolerant and patient, but mira, chinga, 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 chinga. So welcome, Adam Fletcher.
Thank you, Board Member Garcia. Thank you, Anna, so much for the introductions, and we're so excited. So I'm going to be very brief because I'm standing in between all of you and the really powerful information that the team is going to share with you today. I just want to give you a sense of who we are. The partnership, as Board Member Garcia said, our mission is to transform schools and revolutionize school systems to empower all students with a high quality education. And so we sort of think of that as two pieces. One, we work directly with 19 schools in Boyle Heights, South Los Angeles, and Watts. But two, we try to bring things that are working at our schools to help spread them across the district. And one of the things that we're going to talk to you about today is our work about best fit college matching. So just a little context of where we're coming from, and then who we are and who you're going to hear from. So we can go to the next slide. So I'm Adam Fletcher. I'm the Chief of Staff and General Counsel for the partnership, but more importantly, you're going to hear from Miss Rachel Bonkowski. She oversees all of our high schools, and her team have worked most closely on all of this college information. And you're going to hear from two principals of really successful, amazing schools, Principal Batista of Mendez High and Principal Espinosa of Roosevelt Math, Science, and Technology Magnet Academy at Roosevelt High School. And then you're going to hear from some other team members. That's the next slide. So we have 4 college success advisors that you're going to be participating with throughout the panel. Laura Gomez, Cindy Montoya, Lila Gomez, and Chantel Padilla. And there's one staff member who didn't make the slide, but Alice Welpa, she's our director of all things data and can answer all kinds of questions. And it's much of her analysis that underlies the presentation that you're hearing from today. So thank you to all of my colleagues who are presenting. We're all excited to hear from you. And with that, I'll get out of the way and toss it over to Rachel, Ms. Bonkowski.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. And I wanted to just go over our objectives for the evening. If you could go forward to those, thank you so much. So we're gonna spend a chunk of time really looking at college and university graduation rates, as well as this idea of financial need met. We're going to hear from our 2 fabulous principals about how they're leading with this new knowledge at their school sites. And then we're going to also spend a little bit of time learning about financial aid, so that as students and families dive into the college process, that doesn't stand in their way as they're making decisions. Wanted to share with you our Zoom norms. So next slide, please. So we're on a webinar. If you have a question, there are a couple of ways that you can get it to us. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so you can use that and send a question in, or you can also put it in the chat. And in the chat, you have the choice to either send it to everyone, which is panelists and attendees, or you can just send it to the panelists. And my colleague Lila is going to interrupt throughout with questions, and then we also have a set of time at the end where we'll take more questions in a sort of more open format. So you can ask your questions during the presentation and we'll answer a few of them then, and you can also save them for the end, whatever works best for you. All right, so now just to get going, we want to do our first poll of the evening. So we definitely want this to feel and be interactive. So we're going to have a variety of polls throughout the evening, and we'll also have a chance for you to test out a couple of websites with us. So your first poll for the evening is just to find out who's here. So you'll see the poll come up on your screen, and if you could choose if you're a student, counselor, principal, or other partner staff. And give you about 10 seconds to do this. And I feel like we should have Jeopardy music playing in honor of Alex Trebek, but I won't hum it for you because my voice isn't that great. Maybe we'll take 5 more seconds on the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's end the poll, and if we can see, So that's great. It's so wonderful. Seems like we have a predominance of students. Can people see this? Can people see the poll results? Hopefully. Maybe a thumbs up, or somebody tell me in the chat if they can see the poll results. Great. Thank you so much. So thanks, Adam. All right, so we've got a bunch of students, a lot of partners, and then some counselors and principals. So great to see you on here tonight. All right, so let's take a look at our agenda for the evening, which is our next slide. Thank you. So we're gonna just dive right in now into some discussion about what to consider when choosing colleges. And this is really relevant for anybody, whether you're a student, whether you're a 9th grader, a 6th grader, or a 12th grader. And then also super relevant for all of us who work with students. And the first thing that we're gonna do is another poll. We're keeping you on your toes here tonight. So if we can go to the next slide. And Teresa is working our slide magic, so thank you, Teresa. So the question here is, which aspect of college is being given the most attention when students or families research college? So when you think about going to college, what are you most focused on? So please take a minute and choose one. It's fun to watch, see what people are choosing. Keep those answers coming in. We'll keep the poll open for a little bit longer. All right, Monica's got an opinion here in the chat. Thank you, Monica. All right, we'll close out in 5 seconds. All right, if we can see the results, that would be great. All right, so it looks like financial aid is our winner with location, classes, and majors coming in. And then a few people worried about social and cultural diversity and graduation rate. So this is great. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. And this leads us great into our next into our next section. So we're going to talk about this idea of best fit. And there are sort of 3 buckets when we think about this idea of finding a best fit college. The first 2 are kind of traditional ones that we've used historically to advise around college. So the first one is matches interests and preferences, right? So do you want to go to a small college? Do you want to go to a big college? Do you want, you know, a college that's really focused on math and engineering, or do you want a liberal arts school? Those types of things. Is it in a city? Is it out in the boonies? Then the second column is where it gets into your student profile. How likely are you to be admitted? What's your GPA? What are your SAT scores? And you're always trying to build a college list where you have some schools you know you're going to get into. Those are your target matches. You have a couple of schools that are kind of a reach, and then you have some safety schools. This third column is the column that people don't spend a lot of time thinking about, but we want to make the argument tonight that it's incredibly important. And it's especially important for students who are first generation college going, for students who are students of color in this country, and also for students who are low income. So we're going to take a look today at college graduation rates and also at what we call financial need met. So our schools helping you with your financial needs. All right, I'm going to pass it off now to my colleague, Jose Espinosa, the principal of the Math, Science, and Technology Academy at Roosevelt.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's great to be with all of you in this space. I hope we can create some collective action around getting more of our students, and I'm so happy to see that a lot of you are students on this call, through college. The focus has been for such a long time to get all of you to apply and get you prepare you with the most competitive transcripts so that you can actually apply. But now I'm glad we're focusing on getting you through college. So that's the next big step for all of us. So when we think about the last column that Rachel showed us on the previous slide, we are zeroing in on two things: high graduation rates for low-income students and students of color, and then the high percent of need met. But what does that mean, right? That's the question. Well, if you look at the slide here, students graduate within 6 years, effective on-campus resources, culture of high expectations. So those qualities make one college better than the other in the sense of best fit. Financial aid is covered through grants, work study scholarships, and in some cases, federal student loans, which is called a college green light. So we're going to take a little bit deeper dive in this. So let's look more closely at some average graduation rate data on our next slide. So next slide, please. So we know our students are not just choosing four-year institutions. So we also want to share data on our two-year college options. So many students start in a two-year college, in a community college. So I did that.
Jose, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to ask if we can go on to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were there.
No, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No. Okay, thank you. So if you look at this slide is actually comparing the college completion rates of two-year colleges versus four-year colleges. So if you look down the middle there, nationally, 22% of students complete either a certificate, a degree, or transfer to a four-year college within 3 years. If you look at the four-year college completion rates, that's actually almost three times more at 60% within 6 years of all students. So that data isn't just about low income and students of color, it's just all students in general. But then when we look at California, more specifically, 24% of all students as of the class of 2013 completed the two-year college with a degree, a certificate, or a transfer within 3 years. And then that only 18% of underrepresented students, such as minorities and low-income kids, actually ended up getting through the two-year community college in 3 years. When we look at the four-year average in California, it's 59% for all students and 53% of underrepresented minorities. So we're going to dig into the story beneath these averages. So Rachel's going to take us through a deep dive of the graduation rates and financial aid met. So Rachel, take it away.
All right, thanks, Jose. And I want to invite people, please ask questions. Please slow us down if you want to look a little more closely at the data. Students, I know this can be intimidating, but please just don't be shy. Stop us as you need to. All right. And hi to Anna and hi to Christopher. I see some people saying hi in the chat. Nice to have you all here this evening. All right, we are going to go into the next slide. And I am going to get a little geeky and wonky with the data. So I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to screen share into a live website for this, but I'm going to start with this static slide. And it's a little hard to see, so if you're like me and you have old eyes, you might want to minimize your chat or something like that. So this is a slide that shows each dot on here represents a different four-year institution. And what we want you to walk away with from this data set is we want you to understand that even within the Cal States, or even within the UCs, or even within private schools, there's a really broad range of some really important factors. And the factors that we're going to look at here are graduation rate for underrepresented minorities. We're looking at GPA, and then we're looking at how much debt students leave with from the college. So if we look at this chart, and you look at the top circled blue dot, that represents UCLA. the bottom axis, the x-axis, is graduation rate. So UCLA has almost a 90% graduation rate for underrepresented minorities. Fantastic. And then, well, and the other thing I should say is that we're also looking at data around Pell recipients. So these are folks who are low income. So, so actually UCLA, and forgive me, UCLA has a almost 90% graduation rate for Pell recipients. And we'll dig in a little further around underrepresented minorities in a second when I go to the live screen. And then if you look on the y-axis, you can see that that's GPA, right? So we're looking at graduation rate versus GPA. And then you can see a key here for the different colors. And blue means that annually students are paying less than $6,000. All right, and these are again, sorry, the students are paying less than $8,000, which is our lowest cost here. And then it goes to green and then yellow and then red. So then let's look at Stanford. So Stanford has a slightly higher graduation rate than UCLA does, actually has a lower GPA on average, and it's in that same blue band of costing low-income students less than $8,000 a year. Now, $8,000 sounds like a lot of money, but these are schools that give a lot of money and you make a higher salary coming out. So then if we look over on the other side of the graph, you can see an arrow pointing to Cal State Fullerton. So you have to have a lower GPA to get in here. So this is a school for students who have a lower GPA. Cal State Fullerton is also blue, which is great. It provides a lot of financial aid, has a lower cost. However, it does have a much lower graduation rate. So now I'm going to bring us into a more dynamic version of this. And I really want to invite people to ask some questions. If there's a particular school you'd like us to take a look at. Okay, and we're getting a question asking where this data is coming from. And I'm actually going to invite Alice to tell us a little bit about the sources for this data while I move over into a different screen. So Alice, can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about this data source?
Yes, this data source comes from a website called collegeresults.org. And in later data sources, you'll also see that we tend to use IPEDS data. I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it's basically like national level college data.
All right, thank you so much, Alice. And you might just want to stay on for a little while right now. And Lila, I'm also going to invite you to voice in questions if you see more as they come up. So this is the live website that you can also go into. So I'm going to attempt to put that in the chat, although I have to be honest with you, I'm not sure I have the tech savvy to both put this in the chat and screen share. So I'll put it in the chat afterwards.
Just a minute, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. Whew. This is why it's good to work with a team. All right, so this right now represents all states. So right here is a drop-down menu, and I'm gonna go into just California right now, or I'm gonna try to, let's see. All right, so I'm gonna go just into California, and I'm also, so here we are. Here we have schools, four-year colleges and universities in California. And we can see some, I think what I'd like to do is go and bring us to a grad rate where if you're an underrepresented minority, you have a 50% chance of graduating from these schools. And then again, these different colors tell us about how much money you're going to owe upon leaving. So we saw UCLA, We saw Stanford. We see UC Irvine. So a lot of the UCs are represented here. We have some schools that, you know, they have pretty good grad rates, but let's take a look at LMU, but are definitely a lot more expensive on average. That's the other thing to remember, is all of this is on average. So LMU and Occidental, both private schools, but what the data tells us is that, and they have pretty similar graduation rates, they're both hovering in the mid 80s, is that Occidental is actually giving on average better financial aid packages to underrepresented minorities. So as you're looking at schools, this is the kind of data that you want to take into consideration. You can also change the GPA. So if you're like, oh, I'm not, you know, I don't have a 4.0, I have a 3.0. So where does that leave me in terms of graduation? Yikes, that's not so good, right? So if you still have room to go and you're a 9th grader or 10th grader, grades matter, all right? If we bring our grad rate averages down and our GPA up, we have a lot more options, all right? So anyways, I would invite you to take a look at this site and play around with it. Obviously, this is just California. That's the other thing I would invite you to think about, is that across the country, there are schools that want you. There are schools that want to give you a lot of money and can provide you a great shot at a great education. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. I want to see if there are any other questions, and invite Teresa if you want to put the main deck back on. The graduation rate for Berkeley. Okay, so let's see. Somebody just asked the question about what the graduation rate for Berkeley is, and that's actually on this slide. Actually, do you mind going back one, Teresa? Thank you. So it's circled here. So the graduation rate for Berkeley is also about 90%. And it's actually, on average, students are leaving with a little bit more debt than they are from UCLA for whatever reason, but it's still in the green category. So that's Berkeley for you. And I'm also seeing in the chat that our College Success Advisor, Lila, is adding some other information in. And in a minute, we're going to show you how to walk through that information yourself. All right. So the last bit of data that we wanted to show, and this is, I think, especially for our principals and partners and policymakers, but also for our students on tonight, is where our current LAUSD grads are going and what that graduation data looks like. So if you mind, Teresa, going to the next slide. So these are the top attended colleges of LAUSD graduates. And then we have the underrepresented minority completion rates. So of our top 10 schools, 7 of the 10 are community colleges, and the other 3 are CSUs. And to Monica's point earlier, we don't just want to see our kids getting into college, we want to see them getting out. So as students, as you're making decision about colleges, partners, principals, as you're advising students, please have them look at financial need met, and please have them look at graduation rates, because we really want our students and families making informed decisions. And with that, we're going to move into our next slide. Let's see, let me make sure I'm not.
Hi, Rachel. Before we move on, we do have a question. Someone is asking if you could still get into a good college or university even if you failed some classes in your freshman year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious if one of our principals wants to speak to that. Either Mr. Bautista or Mr. Espinosa, do you want to take a crack at that question?
Sure. So the answer is yes. You could still definitely get into a good university if you failed one class in your 9th grade year, and hopefully not more than one, because the more classes you failed and the deeper the hole you dig yourself into in terms of getting a competitive GPA. And when you apply as a senior, the UCs really take a lot of weight on your 10th and 11th grade GPA, even though your ninth grade grades do come into play. They're really looking at your 10th and 11th grade GPA. So getting a slow start in high school is certainly not a roadblock that you cannot overcome in terms of improving your grade to the rest of your ninth grade year in your 10th and 11th grade. You just definitely do not want to have 2, 3, 4, 5 fails, because then it's just going to mean that you're going to have trouble having a competitive GPA.
Thank you so much, Principal Bautista. And then I see another question.
Yeah, I just want to chime in real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Principal Bautista on that. You know, your transcript tells a story, right? And sometimes the story is about, you know, I just didn't have the best start in high school, just like Principal Bautista mentioned. And then I figured out a way to turn it around, and now here I am, right? I made up those classes. I went to summer school, did credit recovery, retook the classes, whatever it is that you had to do to make up those Fs so that they're not on your, you know, so that they don't factor into your GPA as heavily, is very important. But then the turnaround story is always something that everyone wants to read about and root for students. So I would say, yeah, I mean, you definitely have a big chance to still get into a very competitive college. Just make sure you write about it in your personal statement too.
Ooh, Mr. Espinosa, while I've got you there, we have another question.
Yes.
If I start a community college for a year, can I transfer to a university?
Oh, yes. I mean, I started at a community college. I went there because I didn't actually finish high school. I actually ended up taking the high school equivalency exam. So when I transferred into a community college, I was a little bit behind. So I would have not met the statistics that I shared earlier. I would have been outside of that because it took me 4 years to transfer out. But then, you know, with a good GPA, I ended up at UCI. I was actually accepted. I tell this story often, but I was accepted into UCLA, but they wanted me to take a couple more, I think one more English class, and I didn't want to wait one more semester. I was eager to just get on with the 4-year university. And I went to UCI, and I loved it there. And you know, some of my colleagues went to UC Berkeley, and they just went all over the place. So as long as you're focused and you have a good GPA, you'll be fine.
Thank you so much. All right, so keep those questions coming. And we're gonna move now into a little bit of practice. And I'm gonna hand it over to Cindy and Chantel.
Alrighty. Hello, students, partners, and administrators. My name is Cindy, and the next item on the agenda is to put all of our new learning into practice by examining 2 student scenarios. So next slide, please. All right, so for the next 10 minutes, we will be taking a look at 2 student profiles, Jamie and Daniel, and decide what school would be a best fit for them based on their likelihood of being admitted, their likelihood of being successful, their preferences, and their financial need. So for student number 1, we have Jamie with a GPA of 3.9. Her family income is around $40,000 a year, and she prefers a small to medium-sized school and a school that is outside of the LA area. And we also have Daniel with a GPA of 3.4, a family income of $38,000, and would prefer to attend school in the LA area in a school that is larger in size. And before we start comparing schools, Chantel will show us how to use Big Future and collegescorecard.com. Those are the websites that were shared in the chat previously, and those websites will help us find out whether a school like CSULA is the best fit college. So if we get the next slide, please.
Teresa, I think we might have to start that video again and make sure the sound is on.
And 52.
Thank you.
The first tool we're going to use is Big Future. The At a Glance tab has a lot of valuable info such as the school size and graduation rate. CSULA is pretty large with 22,626 undergrads. and 52% of these students graduate within 6 years. Next, we'll take a look at what it takes to get in under the Applying tab. For our purposes today, we're going to look at the Academics and GPA tab. Most schools will have this graph instead of an average admitted GPA, so you can use it to see where you stand. Based off of this, we can see that most admitted CSULA students have a GPA of 3.0 to 3.24. The last aspect, and probably the most important that we'll look at today, is financial aid. Big Future's Paying tab has a lot of information about the sticker price of a school and how much aid they typically offer students. One of the more useful tabs when comparing schools is the Financial Aid by Numbers tab. Here, you can find how much need a school meets and how students are offered aid. So from here, we can see that CSULA typically meets 68% of a student's need. We're going to jump over now to the College Scorecard website from the U.S. Department of Education to finish filling up our table. This website is another valuable tool you can use when doing your college research. So from here, we see that the salary range for CSULA graduates is $20,700 to $82,000. This aspect may be particularly important to you when comparing 2-year and 4-year colleges you are considering. From looking at Big Future, we know that there is a lot of valuable financial aid info already on there, so you can just use this website to supplement your research. You can use the Cost tab to get a more customized prediction of how much a student can expect to pay based off of their family's income. Since both of our sample students' family incomes fall between $30,000 to $48,000, we can expect them to pay $4,807 annually. Now let's get back to the presentation to see the full table.
All right, so hello, it's Chantal again, the voice from the video. So we're gonna go on to the next slide, and what we're seeing on this slide is the completely filled out table for the 4 schools that we chose to look at today. And none of these schools were chosen in particular. We just chose 4 random schools from the California system. So we pulled the same data that we looked for when we did the research for CSULA. And when you're researching schools, it's pretty valuable and useful to have a table like this or some kind of notes to compare different schools you're looking at to help you find the best fit in the end. And you can even add more qualities such as like extracurricular activities that they have that you're interested in, majors and classes that you're looking into, or even teacher ratios that you're looking into if you really care about class size. And so now we want to give you all 5 minutes to look at this chart before I hand it back to Cindy to launch the poll to see what the best fit schools are for our 2 students, Jamie and Daniel. So we'll put 5 minutes on the clock and then I'll come back on in 5 minutes. And if there are any questions during this time, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A feature. So time is up. I hope that was enough thinking time to look at the table and choose the best fit for our students. So we're going to go on to the next slide now, and I'm going to hand it back over to Cindy, and we're going to launch the poll to see what we all think is the best fit for Jamie and Daniel.
Okay, so now looking back at our 2 students and their 4 college options, go ahead and answer the next poll that will be popping up on your screen. What school do you think is the best fit for Jamie and Daniel? Maybe like 5 more seconds to answer. If we have a good amount of responses, I think we could show folks what the audience is thinking. So I would like to ask one of our panelists if they would like to come off mute and explain their answer to this question and see if they align with what the audience is thinking. And I'll call out Mr. Espinosa if he'd like to come off mute to share.
Hello, sorry. I was looking for the unmute button. Yeah, so I mean, I was going through the Tableau data, and it seems like Pomona would be a good fit for Jamie. Pitzer College, I think, is in the Pomona colleges. So and I was just basing it on, whether the dot was blue, and whether it was like over on the graduation rate, did it have a really high graduation rate or not, and whether it was within the range of GPA that Jamie had, and it was a 3.0, right? So that's kind of as far as I got it. I started nerding out on the on the Tableau a little bit. I didn't get into the other aspect of it, but I was looking at Pomona, and then I was going to do a little bit more research on that one. And with Daniel, I was still working on it. Yeah, I don't want. I'm not sure if Pomona was something that that his GPA would get him there, but and I think he had other options other than Cal State LA. So I was still working on Daniel. So I'll pass it on to someone else.
Yeah, so there's a lot of votes that came in for Stanford and Pomona, which is really nice to see. For Jamie, these 2 schools would support Jamie's small to medium-sized preference. They both branch out of Los Angeles, and they have a very strong estimated graduation rate within those 6 years. And they would both meet 100% of her financial need. And then for Daniel, I also agree that CSULA and ELAC were one of his best options. They're both large campuses that would allow him to stay in LA. However, CSULA does lean towards being a stronger best fit school because he does have a higher chance of graduating within 6 years, like Mr. Espinosa was saying, and then he would also receive a higher amount of financial need to cover his costs. Alrighty, so thanks for participating, and unless there's any questions, I'll pass it to Rachel.
Great, thank you so much, Cindy and Chantel. And Mr. Espinosa, thanks for letting us put you on the spot. We're gonna move ahead to the next part of our agenda now that you've had a chance to practice thinking about best fit and playing around with some of the tools. And we're gonna go into a concept that's called undermatching, which I had frankly never heard of until a few years ago. And I'm gonna pass it over to Principal Bautista to tell us about undermatching.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I hope, first and foremost, I hope you and your families are well and healthy. Thank you to Monica Garcia. Thank you to the partnership for inviting us, Jose and myself, to present today. I do want to start off by saying that it does feel good to wear a tie. That picture that you guys saw at the beginning was taken before the school closures, and it's probably only the third time that I wear a tie since then. So don't mind my sweats that I'm wearing. You can only see my tie. So similar to Rachel, this idea of undermatching is also new to us, the partnership principles. We also heard it for the first time a few years back. So we'll go to the next slide so that we can see the definition of undermatching. So undermatching is when a student chooses to attend a higher education institution that is less selective than that which he or she could attend. So in other words, students with incredibly high GPA skill sets, for whatever reason, choose a less selective school. And if they are eligible for that higher selective school, those schools tend to have, to connect it to the previous part of the presentation, tend to have higher graduation rates for underrepresented students, and then also support systems for underrepresented students, and upon graduating, networks that really help underrepresented students upon graduating college. So we go to the next slide. We'll kind of take you a little bit into the journey at Mendes High School in terms of trying to get students to not undermatch. So a first step that we had to undertake at Mendes was having all of our college eligible students take advantage of the Cal State and UC fee waivers. In other words, all students eligible for four-year institutions apply, and not only do they apply for one Cal State if they're eligible, or for one UC if they're eligible, they fill up their entire waiver, the entire fee waiver, and they apply for 4 and 4. This might seem like an automatic, but it wasn't for us. This took some strategic thinking and some systemic thinking, messaging to our students and indicating to them, if you are eligible, you are going to apply. And even then, every once in a while, we do have a few students who resist a little bit, but we try our best to encourage them, because come March, it's better that they have the option than not. If they don't apply, they won't even have an option, but if they apply, then in March, they might get accepted, and then they have that option of going or not. Now, in terms of undermatching, this means that our students with our highest GPA, our students that are the most competitive, do apply to the most competitive UCs and Cal States. And hopefully if accepted, then they consider, and hopefully they get to attend. However, very early in the history of Mendes High School, we were having some of our students with straight A's, 4.0 GPAs, applying and not being accepted to the high tier UCs and the high tier Cal States. And trying to understand why, one significant addition to our program that we added was that although they had a high GPA, they weren't very competitive, in that they weren't taking many higher level courses that the colleges want students to take, in particular AP courses. So these more selective institutions want students to challenge themselves in high school, want students to take more AP courses. And it was no fault of our students. When we opened, we only offered one AP course. And as we progressed through our first few years, we only added a couple more. So students didn't have a great selection of courses that they could select. And so what we have done strategically and systemically, again, over the past 4 or 5 years, is we've grown our AP program. We now offer 21 unique AP classes, which is one of the highest selections in LAUSD. Certainly for a school our size, we're under 1,000 students. We definitely have the highest selection. But I would think that even at 21 AP classes, even with some of the larger schools, we're probably right up there. So being able to offer 21 unique AP classes affords our students to challenge themselves as early as the 9th grade and just progress through high school by taking more and more AP classes. And we've seen the impact. So last year, our class of 2020, we graduated students who took 9 AP courses, 8 AP courses, 7 AP courses during their time at Mendes. And as our program has grown and students are taking advantage of these opportunities, we expect that we'll continue to graduate students with even 10 or more AP courses. Now, this is important, of course, because then as you take AP courses and hopefully do well in them, you increase your GPA. And as you saw there, UCLA, which appears to be a great option, was up there like at a 4.2. You got to have like a 4.2 if you're a Pell Grant recipient to be able to go to UCLA. And the way that you're going to have a 4.2, a 4.3, a 4.4, even a 4.5 is by being able to take these AP classes. So this expansion of the AP program allows our very high-skilled, very high ability level students to then make sure that they're not undermatched. So if you don't even have that option, you could be a 4.0 incredibly talented student. So you're going to undermatch just because your school doesn't give you the opportunity to be eligible for these higher selective schools. And then the current step that we're in right now, thanks in part to the professional development that we got at the partnership, in particular around best fit and undermatched schools, is we're trying to get our students to apply beyond the Cal States and the UCs. If you look at our data, the great majority of our students are still being accepted and attending Cal States and UCs. But as you have seen in the presentation presented today, there are other options available that, based on their data, have shown that they can support underrepresented students through college, and then also give them good financial aid packages. So we are just beginning this process. We've the last 2 years, we've actually been able, through like a mosh podge of like donations and grant opportunities, we've been able to hire somebody at Mendes at our College Career Center whose responsibility it is to encourage students to research these institutions beyond the Cal States and the UCs and to apply to them, and then hopefully once accepted, to consider them based on the data given. And last year was certainly one of our most diverse classes. So our class of 2020 had students going to schools beyond Cal States and UCs in a much more diverse way than previous year. Not drastically, not dramatically, but definitely much more than we've had in the past. And then we'll go to the next slide if we can. So why do students undermatch? So why do students who have these high skill sets, strong GPAs, possibly select schools that are less selective than if they would have applied to more selective schools and been accepted? So the research indicates that lack of college knowledge and college going culture is one of them. So students are not aware of these opportunities that exist, and of course they're going to pass on them. And then number two, the perception that they can't afford college. So some of our students will pass on these alternatives to Cal States and UCs in large part because they're private and because they might think like, I'm not going to be able to afford a private school. It's just going to be too expensive. So if we go to the next slide. So this is what LAUSD and the Partnership for LA Schools are doing well. So recently, in both LAUSD and the partnership, there has been college culture campaigns started with the elementary schools. So this expectation and this idea that once you get to high school, you will have the opportunity to choose college has started now at a much younger age than the high school. So you see it now at the elementary levels, you see it now at the middle school levels. And so when students get to the high schools and we're talking about A through G requirements, the students may not necessarily know the details, but for many of them, they're not hearing it for the first time. They've heard it before. And thanks to these campaigns, many students are beginning to visit universities and colleges in elementary and middle school. So if they come to the high school and we end up taking a trip to a college, for a good number of our students, it's no longer the very first trip they take to a university. Number two, LAUSD has a few college empowerment counselors. We have one. At Mendez, we're very fortunate to have one. It's a district funded position. And then this year, for the first time, the partnership funded college success advisors who are joining us today in the presentation. And they are currently helping students with the college application process and also FAFSA. And our college empowerment counselor at Mendez has been incredibly critical with our FAFSA application. 2 years in a row, we've been recognized by the California Aid Commission as being in one of the top 25 high schools in terms of the percentage of students that we got to apply to FAFSA. And so these extra positions at the high school level are very critical to helping our students not undermatch, because they then can explore the financial possibilities of school. So not here on the slide, it's also the fact that the college empowerment counselor and our college success advisors will also help students identify other forms of financial aid in addition to the FAFSA. And then recently, of course, there's been a focus on what happens beyond graduation, in particular the summer after students graduate, and both the district and the partnership have had summer melt programs where after graduation, we work with our seniors to ensure that they filled out all their forms correctly, they didn't miss any deadlines, that they know how to enroll and register at the university, so that during the summer, some of our students don't lose out on the opportunity to go to school because they missed a deadline, because they missed a payment, because they forgot to check an email. And that, of course, that's also very critical to ensure that students do not undermatch. And then we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the benefits of helping our students who enter their senior year with an incredibly competitive data. So high GPA, extracurricular activities, leadership opportunities. If we are able to help them make sure that they do not undermatch, they apply to these more selective schools, get accepted, and hopefully attend these more selective schools, are not held back because they fear that they can't afford the schools, is that upon graduation, they'll find valuable networks to find higher paying jobs. Throughout their lifetime, they'll have higher income. And these students will also most likely pursue graduate degrees upon graduating the university. And so that is my part of the presentation today. And I'll turn it over back to Rachel.
Thank you so much. It's such powerful information, and I appreciate also the insights on what you shared at your school site, Mauro. I want to pause for a second before we go into our next section. We did get some different questions. Lila, do you want to bring those questions up and we'll figure out the best way to answer them?
Yeah, so the first question that I see is someone asking, can we also take extra classes and AP classes during the summer if we didn't take them during the school year? And if you could still get accepted into competitive colleges or universities?
Principal Bautista, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so usually the AP classes are only offered during the school year, but other opportunities to enhance your college application is if your high school offers, for example, a summer program that you can take. So for example, the Eastside High Schools offer the Jaime Escalante Summer Program, which is a very valuable program that also looks very good in your college application. Or sometimes you could take extra classes at the local community school, either because you go out of your way and actually enroll there, or many of the local community schools through a partnership with the district offer concurrent classes that are often offered after school at the high school level, and you take those classes, they can also bump up your GPA and look good for your college application.
Fantastic, thank you so much. There's a couple of other questions, but we're actually gonna be getting in, and some of them pertain to financial aid. So we're gonna get into financial aid in a few minutes. And so we'll save those questions for then. We're gonna keep moving now, and we're gonna have a chance to just chat a little bit with our school principals. We're running a little behind time, and we do want to get to our financial aid section, particularly because we have so many students online with us. So I'm going to invite Principal Bautista and Principal Espinosa to turn on their cameras and unmute, and just ask a couple of questions of you. And I'm going to start with just asking kind of the key question of the evening, and what, you have both just started thinking about this data over the last year or two, similar to the partnership, and wanted to ask you how you're making changes at your school site based on this idea of best fit and based on the data that's emerging around graduation rates and need met. So why don't I turn it over first to Mr. Espinosa and give you a chance to answer that question.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Rachel. Well, one way, and Principal Bautista mentioned this a little bit, it's the fee waiver, so taking advantage of fee waivers. But also, we do use our partnership donation funds to pay for another, to help students purchase another application. So sometimes students, they don't qualify for the fee waivers. So we ask families, look, if, these are the top 3 or 4 schools that we feel your student is the best match for. Can you afford paying for 2 of them? And then we'll help you out with 1, something like that. And that actually does expand the pool quite a bit for students. And it's greatly appreciated also by the families. And we have found that hadn't we done that, some of the kids would not have gotten some, some upper, some other choices that would be a good fit for them. So that's one. The other is that a few years back we decided to hire counselors that also have college advising experience. So, we are a relatively small school. We're about 560 this year. And so, we all wear multiple hats. So one of the hats that I needed my academic counselors to wear is the college counseling piece as well. And so both our counselors have experience working in the private sector with nonprofits, helping kids with their college applications. So what ends up happening is that the college conversation happens every time there's an IGP with students. And the conversation around matching for best colleges happens really early because of that. And so our master schedule is being driven also by the types of classes that would make our students the most competitive, and that we would help them produce, if you will, the most competitive transcript for them. So that's another big change. And something that we're exploring right now is that anecdotally, we've found that students who have a strong network of support, parents, peers, teachers, and so on, when they go to a good, best match school, sometimes it's far away from the LA area, they tend to stay there and be more successful. So we're also right now trying to figure out what that network of support could be for all of our students, right? So that they have someone that they trust and they're familiar with, that they can actually contact and just share, how things are going. And maybe they'll decide to stay, because we do have, not a whole lot, but we do have a few that, we were hoping that they would stay in a college that they were accepted to. And sometimes these are really great colleges, but then somehow the being homesick or whatever just, pulls them back into the LA area. So, like I said earlier, we found that students that have gone, like back east and up north and so on, the kids that end up staying and finishing are those that have that strong network of support.
Thank you so much, Principal Espinosa. And I'll just attest that among the many things that Mr. Espinosa said, he does indeed have amazing counselors at his site. We've really enjoyed collaborating with them, and they've pushed our thinking at the partnership as well. I'm going to pass it over to Principal Bautista, really with the same question. How are you leading with this knowledge around best fit and undermatching under your belt now as a school leader?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I mean, I don't know how many counselors are on the call, but I want to give a huge shout out to the LAUSD counselors. At the high school level, I think many high schools do fund a college and career counselor, unless you're really, really small, like the magnet is, and Jose just explained that his academic counselors have to take on those roles and responsibilities. But even if you do have a college and career counselor, the work from August to November is really, really focused on the Cal States and the UCs, supporting those students apply to those two networks of schools here in California. And then after students apply, there's an immediate shift to FAFSA and making sure the students apply to FAFSA. That being able to research schools outside of Cal States and UCs is a lot of work. And so the biggest difference that we've made, which I explained earlier, was we found someone last year and this year to take on that role. So there's someone at Mendez whose responsibility in the College and Career Center is to look at schools outside of the UCs and the Cal States. And it requires that extra person because it's that much work. So that's probably the biggest difference we've done the last couple of years. And as I mentioned last year, we certainly saw the benefits of a few more students deciding to attend schools outside of the Cal State and the UC systems.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're a little behind in time, and we have a lot of questions coming in around financial aid. So we are going to shift over into that conversation. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to hear more from both of you during our Q&A session. But thank you so much for sharing those pearls of wisdom. And we'll shift over now. So thank you. We're going to head into the next part of our presentation, which is on financial aid. So if we could move forward on the slides. We're going to hear from Laura Gomez, one of our college success advisors, and she's going to lead us through a fast and furious and very interactive financial aid session. So be ready to answer polls, everybody. Okay, here we go. Laura, over to you.
Great. So as we saw in all the previous slides, financial aid is a huge factor, right, when we're considering attending colleges and choosing our college list. So that we actually know that there are many financial aid questions and myths. So that's what we're here for today. We're here to like kind of dismantle some of those myths and actually bring light to some of the truth about financial aid. So we can go to the next slide. So we know that there's a lot of financial aid questions and myths that may actually inhibit students and families from attending their best fit schools, especially now during this pandemic. However, we're going to take a look at some of the basic requirements in order to familiarize you with the facts that you need. And then briefly, we'll be looking at like the FAFSA and like the California DREAM Act, the deadlines, and answer some of those questions. So we can go to the next slide. So a big question is, can college be affordable for my family? And the answer is yes. Hundreds of colleges throughout the country meet 100% of financial need for their students, as we saw with our samples of Jamie and Daniel. So that means that after schools or the financial aid determine how much your family can afford, they will then provide you the rest of the financial aid to cover the rest of your education. So something we see a lot when you fill out the FAFSA form is the expected family contribution. So a nice resource to use for that we've seen in the chat is the Big Future College Board website. And we recommend applying to the schools that meet at least the 90% of the financial need met. So a best fit list includes the schools that are affordable to you. So you could go to a great college for free is what we're basically seeing with this financial aid part. So if we can go into our next section, we'll be actually going into these kind of myths that we see a lot. And so by going into this true or false poll, so I really want to get a feel for where you all are with this. So only students, or we can go to the next slide. So one of the big ones is that only students with the best grades qualify for financial aid. So big thing some students think is that, well, I don't have the best grades, so I might not even apply to any college because I won't get any financial aid. So if we can pull that poll up and see what do our participants think about this myth. Okay, we'll give it 5 more seconds to see if people think this is true or if it's false. Okay. If we can pull up the answer for that now. So a lot of people say false, and that is actually false. So while a high grade point average will help a student get into a good school, and it may help with academic scholarships, most of the federal student aid programs do not take students' grade into consideration. So that's false. So we'll go into our next poll. And our next slide as well. So my family makes too much money, so I won't qualify for aid. So this is a big one that we're also seeing coming in our Q&A section. So what do you all think about this one? Okay, we'll give it 5 more seconds to see what people think. So false. Yeah, so the answer is false. So there are many factors that are taken into consideration, and there's actually no income cutoff to qualify for federal student aid. So remember, when you fill out the free application for the FAFSA, you're also automatically applying for funds that are from your state and possibly some grants or other scholarships from your schools as well. Okay, we go into our next slide and our next poll. So the next one is, I can apply for federal aid and add schools that I'm considering, even though I have not applied or been accepted yet. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. What do people think about this one? And if we can see the results for this. So true. And the answer is true. So even if there is only a slight chance of you applying to that college or school, listing that school on your FAFSA form is very beneficial. You can always remove schools later if you decide not to apply. But if you wait to add schools last minute, you also have to remember that you could miss the first come, first served financial aid. Okay, we can go to our next slide. So our next one says, federal student aid is just like free money, just like grants. Okay, we can see the results for this one. So people are saying false, and the answer is false. So although some of your financial aid might include some stuff like grants and or scholarships, there are other types of financial aid that helps which also includes like low interest loans and also work study, which is basically just a part-time job that is on or near campus. Okay, so our next and final true or false statement. I should apply for the federal student aid as early as I can to be able to get the most aid possible. Yeah, everybody's doing great. Majority of people got these right. So this one true. 24 people say true, and this is true. Many states work in a first come, first serve basis, and the application did open on October 1st. So working on it on your financial aid form and submitting it the earliest that you can will be certainly to your advantage, because you'll have a better chance at federal and school financial aid. Okay, so now we'll dive in a little bit into kind of the financial aid basic criteria, like what is needed to qualify for the FAFSA. So the basic criteria for FAFSA is being a US citizen or permanent resident, having a high school, being a high school graduate or enrolled in a 2 or 4 year college. Another eligibility is to have a degree or certificate program, having a valid social security number, males registered for selective service in the US, also having satisfactory academic progress while in college or career just to maintain your FAFSA. So in order to qualify for federal financial aid, students must submit FAFSA by the deadline, which is in March 2nd. Okay, so now we'll go into the DREAM Act, which is also another form of financial aid. The DREAM Act allows undocumented students to apply for and receive state-based financial aid and institutional scholarship. So a big thing that sometimes inhibits students from attending their best fit colleges also is for undocumented students. They think maybe there's no resources out there for them, but there is. And it's just like the FAFSA, essentially, you'll be eligible to receive Cal grants, UC grants, state university grants, as well as like the California College Promise Grant and EOP grants, and other private lender, school, and state loans. So make sure to also look out for the deadline for the California DREAM Act, which is also in March 2nd. And I know we stormed right through these, but I know that there's going to be a lot of questions for these. And yeah, we can get the rest of our panelists to see if we have any more questions on any of the presentation. I'll pass it back over to Rachel.
Thank you, Laura, so much. So we've definitely got some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to invite Lila to moderate those questions. And I also do want to do a bit of a disclaimer. While we've got a lot of expertise here, unfortunately, the college counselor I did invite was not able to make it tonight because, ironically, she's doing a financial aid workshop with her students and families. So we don't have college counselor level expertise. So we're going to do our best here, but just know that you can also always ask a counselor at your school if you need to. So Lila, I'm passing it over to you for the questions.
Yes, so the first one I see is, what are the different payment plans to help pay off college debt? And I personally was grateful enough to get a full ride, and my parents helped me out with rent. So I'm not too familiar with loans. So if any of the panelists have experience with that, I invite you all to speak and about your experience with it.
Well, I got, I don't know, it's been a while since I've got my loan, so this may be a little dated, but I'll share anyway. So I ended up getting 2 types of loans. One is an unsubsidized Stafford loan, which is that you start paying interest on it, I think like about 6 months after you get the loan. And then there's one that's subsidized, which means that you don't pay any interest on it until after you graduate. So there's like 6 months, a 6-month grace period after you graduate. So I ended up taking out loans for my BA and then taking out loans for my master's and my graduate work. And that's where my unsubsidized loans came in. And so I ended up paying for those almost like within the year that I got them. So, and I know there's other types of loans. There's like private loans that since my time have appeared in the horizon. But for some reason, this is one where I trust the government more, probably, because especially on the unsubsidized loans, right? Because those are pretty, the interest rates on those are pretty stable. They don't change a lot in most cases. And if they're subsidized, you don't have to, like I said earlier, you don't have to pay for interest rates until on the interest rate or the loan until after you've graduated. But I don't know if anybody else would like to share.
Thanks, Mr. Espinosa. I'm going to pick on Mr. Bautista for a second, because not only does he have his own experience, but he's got 2 sons in college as we speak. So I'm going to bet he may have some loan advice as well.
Yes, so in terms of my experience, one tidbit I want to share about the loans I got when I decided to pursue a career in education. There were programs that paid off a good chunk of my loans because I pursued education and I pursued to work in underrepresented communities. So I know that there's probably different programs out there, not just in education, that will help you pay off for some of your loans, depending on what you do after school. And then, yes, so as Principal Espinosa shared, I do have 2, and as Rachel shared, I do have two boys in college right now. If they have taken out loans, it's been the subsidized loans, the ones where they don't have to pay until after, or the interest doesn't accrue until after they graduate, which is the ones I would recommend you take if you have an option.
Awesome. And I want to get back to a question that was asked a little bit earlier, asking if AP classes are assigned by teachers based on a student's capacity, or can students who maybe have an IEP also take AP classes?
So our hope is that AP Access is open because there's different ways to measure success for AP classes. So one, of course, is you take the course and you pass the exam at the end, which is great for everybody. It's great for the teacher, great for the school, great for the student. The student gets college credit and it looks obviously good in the college application. But being able to persevere through an AP course throughout the year, regardless of the score at the end, is also a great success. If you are able to hang in there and complete the rigor of the course and come out at the end being able to say, yeah, I completed an AP course, then that's a great success. So hopefully at whatever school you're at, it's open access and you can get that class and no one tells you, you cannot get this class because you don't have a certain score in the state test, or you don't have like a certain GPA, or people don't think that you're capable of persevering through the class.
So I just want to chime in real fast. I definitely agree with that. It's AP program, or AP programs in general, I should say, should be open to all students. We do invite all students and encourage them to consider an AP class, and to talk to their teacher about what the requirements are and what life of an AP student is like too, because we also want our students to understand what they're getting themselves into. Because yes, we want all of our students to be challenged, because once you go to college, it's going to be a challenging environment too. But at the same time, we don't want to overwhelm our students, or we don't want our students to become so overwhelmed that they're just not functioning. So it's a decision that the student makes, sometimes in consultation with their family and the teacher. But yes, the AP program is open to all students.
Awesome, thank you so much. Another question I see is, how important will my GPA be when I graduate high school and enter college or a university?
I mean, I think I can speak for everybody on this panel and say it's important. I think that Mr. Espinosa and Mr. Bautista talked a little bit earlier about the fact that when you're first entering high school, your 9th grade GPA might be a little less important than once you hit your 10th and 11th grade year, but it is very important. It's one of the big factors that schools look at. And particularly right now, SAT is a little bit up in the air because of COVID. GPA is all the more important. It doesn't mean it's the only thing, but it is a big factor. So if you can, from the start, keep your grades up, that's the easiest way to do this, is to just have good grades from the start. But there are plenty of ways to make up classes and to make up your grades if you don't do as well as you had hoped, or as well as you were ready to do in 9th grade. So you just need to talk to your school if there's some classes that you want to bring your grades up in.
If I could just add something real fast, Rachel. I would recommend, especially the students on this call. You know, the resource that the partnership just shared right now, that Tableau public data that has, you know, the GPAs and the graduations, grades for all the colleges across the country. It's not 100%, but there's a very good representative group there. And play around with the GPAs and see what you find out, right? Because part of the difficult part of the best fit conversation and the undermatch is helping students understand sort of the realities of what it's like to apply, and what it is that needs to, you know, what it is that students need to do also so that they're as competitive as possible. So, you know, like I said, that's a great research tool, right? Look at it and see what you find given whatever GPA you have. You know, you can toggle up and down the GPA metric a little bit and see what you find. But then, you know, if let's say your GPA, you're a senior, your GPA is not where it needs to be, you know, given that data, you know, the community college is an option for some of you, right? It could be. And as long as you stay focused, right? And you don't get trapped in community college, because that's the #1 issue with community college, the data that I shared. Very few students end up transferring out because they just, you know, they end up getting trapped there. But if you have a plan, you're motivated, and you're gonna get through community college because your goal is to transfer out, you will transfer out. So take a look at that data. I totally recommend that, guys. Do that.
Thank you, Rachel and Jose. Another question that I see, if anyone knows, is are there any special changes that were done to the FAFSA this year due to COVID-19?
Does anybody know that one? I definitely do not. Okay. Any of our success advisors, do you know?
As to my knowledge, working with the College Center, I don't believe so, but if anyone else has heard anything, feel free to chime in.
Great. Looks like we'll move on to the next question.
Awesome. So another one that says, have financial aid packages been extended to 6 years, since that is what the average is nowadays? And if not, what do kids do if they only get 4 years but have to do a 5th year or a 6th year?
So my understanding is that currently financial aid is only for 4 years, unless someone can correct me if I'm wrong. As Jose said, back in the day, and or at least for me, in the previous century when I went to school, your financial aid was extended a 5th year and even a 6th year if you needed it. But I think now it's capped at 4 years. But if anybody has other information, they can share.
Well, just to add a little bit to that, Principal Bautista, so my recollection is that there's a cap. So there's a limit of how much financial aid you can request when you're an undergraduate, when you're working on your BA. So typically, you know, students reach that limit within 4 years. Very rare, right? It's possible that if you still have some financial aid available, that they may extend it beyond the 4th year. But this is one that I think I've seen in the chat, you know, talk to your college counselor at your school just to get more specific information on that.
So I just want to take a minute and acknowledge Principal Bautista. He had to step out, and I also want to recognize that we're past, it's past 7 o'clock. I think we have a few more minutes where we can keep trying to tackle some of these questions. Ms. Garcia, Ms. Cortez, feel free to let us know if you need us to wind down, but we'll keep plowing through the questions. So back to you, Lila.
Another question that I see is, what happens if I get an exception letter from a university that is in one of choices? It was left by an anonymous person. I don't know if you'd like to elaborate in the chat maybe on this question. While you do that, I can move on to another one that says, if I do financial aid now and move to another country, do I still have financial aid?
And I had a question about that question, in fact. So are you moving away just for you know, if you filled out financial aid for next year and you're moving away right now, or you do have to fill out financial aid annually, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not something where you fill it out and it lasts forever. So it really depends on how long you're going. It really depends on how long you're leaving the country for, is I think how I would answer that. But if you want to clarify your question a little bit more, then please do.
Another question, if anyone wants to elaborate, could you explain college credits a little bit more?
So I'm going to pick on Cindy, Chantel, or Lauda. Tell us if one of you can chime in on this.
I can share that in college, each class that you take is measured by credits. So usually I went to UCLA, so each class tends to be measured in between 4 to 5 credits. So for financial aid, I do believe you have to take at least 12 units, so 12 credits each quarter or each semester to qualify for financial aid. So that meant that I had to take at least 3 classes each quarter to receive my financial aid. So that also transfers over to the semester system. So if you're taking classes that are like 1 credit or 2 credits, you have to take as many units as you need to reach that cap, and then you will qualify for financial aid.
Fantastic. And I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll leave you with some ways to get in contact with us if you need more information.
Okay, awesome. The last one, it's a pretty specific question. So someone is asking, I have a daughter who wants to go to Princeton University and study architecture, and she needs to have a portfolio of her jobs. And we're looking for an architect program or STEM program like MESA or Cosmos, or we could pay for a program at UCLA or USC to help her when she applies. She is in the STEM Academy at WAPHS in 11th grade. Does anyone know of any other cheaper options that she could use?
Does anybody feel like they know a bit to answer, or is this a question we should really refer her to the college counselor?
I'd say college counselor.
All right, we're gonna tell you to make an appointment with your college counselor and get better advice than we can give you this evening. So I think we're gonna call it an evening here, and you can see our emails here on this slide. And you're welcome to reach out to any of our success advisors, particularly if we didn't have a chance to get to your questions. And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Garcia.
Yay! Let's go, class of 21. Thank you to all of our amazing panelists. You know, I was an academic advisor for Volunteers of America for 6 wonderful years, and I read statements from students, and we talked about every one of those applications and the fee waivers, and Rachel and team is right. There are people super knowledgeable about all kinds of details, and they are at your schools. So please know that there are those resource pages we just saw, but lots of folks close that it is a full-time job. I acknowledge that. I hope LA Unified does invest in more support for college counseling and going to and through the Best Fit College. I'm excited about your future. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you to all of our friends at the partnership. Thank you to our amazing students and parents. Super engaging. I'm excited for you. And I want you to know, I would tell every college they are lucky to have you on their campus. You are adding to the quality of their student body. And whether it's Columbia or Princeton or Berkeley or UCLA or Go Eagles at Cal State LA or Huskies at ELAC, wherever you go, you make the commitment that you are going to make it to graduation and keep telling your story. We are all here to support you. I love it. Anyway, friends, thank you again, Ana Ponce, Teresa, Jackie, everybody who helped us. We're going to say goodbye, but we're going to see you all at graduation. Fun ahead. Adios.